Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, we have more riots at the polling station. The threat of war is ongoing, and we're seeing some of the results of what Congress thinks about the president's use of force. We're going to start off our article today with Kenya's presidential rerun election has met with protests and clashes. The chairman of Kenya's Electoral Commission said that the voting that was supposed to happen in the 4 western countries or counties will have to be delayed until a further date. He did say that this is because of threats to the Electoral Commission that were made to them, and that his staff just couldn't get to the stations in time. Well, out of a total of about 40,000 polling stations, there were 3,600 plus that weren't able to open up because of that unrest.
Well, since 2015, more than 10,000 Yemenis have been killed and almost 40,000 injured, with 80% of the population in need of humanitarian aid. UN Emergency Relief Coordinator Mark Lowcock said that millions of people are on the verge of famine, and this is the world's worst cholera epidemic. The Saudi-led coalition of countries have been bombing the capital, Sana'a, and other parts of Yemen to try to restore the government ousted by Houthi rebels. UN officials blame both sides for throwing the country into the brink of famine and for the collapsed economy.
Oh, boy. Now, the President, Trump, says that he is expecting great things to come from his upcoming Asia trip. For Japan and South Korea, the trip is a show of support as the U.S. has maintained a U.S. military presence there since the middle of last century. Unlike former presidents, Trump will skip a trip to the demilitarized zone between the North and South Korea because it's becoming cliche, he said. A U.S. official said that China is doing a great job to put pressure on North Korea, but said that they could always do more. And with that, the Treasury Department said that it was cutting off a small Chinese bank from the entire U.S. banking system because of alleged ties to the North Korea ballistic missile program.
China has, in response, slammed the U.S. for that, accusing the U.S. of long-arm jurisdiction on countries. Now, Beijing said that it has been strictly and comprehensively implementing UN sanctions against Pyongyang. The U.S. accuses China of helping North Korea get around the sanctions to fund its missile program.
Well, the AUMF, or Authorization for Use of Military Force, is up once again in the news. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said that the AUMF should not be time constrained or geographically restrained. The AUMF states that the president is authorized to use all necessary and appropriate force against nations, organizations, or persons that he or she determines planned, authorized, committed, or aided the terror attacks on September 11, 2001.
Well, currently the president already has constitutional authority to strike North Korea without new permissions from Congress. Now, this potential use of force leading to war has many questioning the legal authority and ramification of the AUMF.
And regarding the AUMF stretching its wings, so to speak, in other areas, soldiers that are fighting in Niger, many officials in the Senate and Congress didn't even realize that there were over 1,000 troops there. In an interview with Meet the Press, Senator Lindsey Graham said that he didn't know there were 1,000 plus troops in Niger, while Senator Rand Paul stated that he applauded the AUMF for exerting the authority of the U.S. He said, well, if it doesn't limit the authority of the executive branch, well, I'm not sure. The executive branch thinks it's already too restrictive. He said, I think we'll still authorize war in 34 countries, at least 7 for sure, but probably 30 something. So, they're showing that they're going to go ahead and authorize this use. The executive branch is saying, hey, this AUMF is a little bit too restrictive, but they're like, let's go ahead and just move with it because we're still going to authorize, war to take place.
Right. Well, and the battles don't stop there. Now, coming up now are more stories of the wars taking place in areas most might never have thought of. Our field correspondent Larry McGee has a report. Larry, is this something out of the movies? Are they taking war to space?
Strange sometimes how Hollywood fiction turns out to be real life. The United States Air Force considers space to be a war-fighting domain just like air, land, and sea. And according to recent reports, they are preparing for the possibility of war there. One danger presented is tons of fast-moving space debris, but there is also acknowledgement that space is growing increasingly crowded and competitive as various countries launch their own programs complete with new technologies. While the U.S. was once considered the dominant player in the bid to control the heavens, they are now reported to be in a three-way competition with Russia and China. The military's activities in this field are receiving particular attention as of late as tensions continue to escalate between the U.S. and North Korea. America's Air Force Base in Colorado is said to be on 24-hour watch on behalf of itself and those underneath its umbrella for any missile launched anywhere in the world. 10 countries, including North Korea and Iran, are believed to have the ability to launch satellites into orbit. America's strongest competitors, Russia and China, are also reported to be in the developmental stages of technology that could potentially blind and cause damage to American satellites. The U.S.'s hope to guard against such an occurrence are golf ball-like structures which line the Aurora, Colorado horizon. Inside the weatherproof domes are satellites standing 60 feet high, and their job is to scan the planet for the most dangerous weapons. The complex, multifaceted wars raging among the nations has an energy front as well. There are claims coming forth from the U.S. government of Russian efforts to manipulate the energy market through the use of social media. Along with that are increased sanctions from the U.S. on Russia's energy sector connected to hostilities between the two nations on the issue of the Ukraine. The latest measures are reported to have imposed additional constraints on U.S. firms collaborating with Russian oil companies, focusing specifically on the areas of deep water, shale, and Arctic projects. In and around the region supported by the waters of the Euphrates, things are still being shaken up, with one of the latest events being the resignation of the Lebanese prime minister. The former Lebanese head made his announcement in Saudi Arabia and has reportedly not returned home since, and has been traveling instead, speaking concerning the conflicts and political problems engulfing his region. Commentary offered by Saudi Arabia, however, has focused primarily on Iran. As far as Riyadh is concerned, Iran is engaged in direct military aggression by furnishing Houthi rebels in Yemen with missiles that are being used to target their nation. In addition, the oil titan says that the very presence of Hezbollah in the Lebanese government is tantamount to a declaration of war. Meanwhile, Hezbollah itself is accusing Saudi Arabia of orchestrating Mr. Hariri's resignation. The Secretary General for the organization says it was not their desire that the former prime minister would leave, but it was instead actually a move imposed by Riyadh. As the confusion unfolds, Israel is said to be delighted. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a statement saying the resignation of Lebanese Prime Minister Hariri and his statements are a wake-up call for the entire international community to act against Iranian aggression. Further reports include leaked cables allegedly obtained by Barak Ravid, sent by the Israeli government, instructing its diplomats to support the Saudi Arabian position on several issues, including its war with the Houthis in Yemen and the concerns voiced by Mr. Hariri at his resignation that Iran and Hezbollah are gaining in influence. Prime Minister Netanyahu has also commented that he believed that Iran was attempting to turn Syria into another Lebanon, and alluded to the idea that at the root of the current crisis might be the Syrian government's looming victory in Syria. At the same time, Israel is reported to have launched a recent attack on a copper factory in Syria, which the Israeli media says was actually an arms depot. The Syrian army is said to have struck back by firing a surface-to-air missile at the jet which carried out the attack. The Israeli assault It's reported to be merely the latest event in a string of such events that began when violence broke out in Syria in 2011. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. The Time, Jeff. Back to you.
Well, it doesn't look like Israel is letting up on any of its bombing campaigns on Syria, and so they're not getting any closer to peace, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, Saudi Arabia is sending shock waves across its kingdom and around the world as it detains some of its own top officials to investigate allegations of corruption. In total, 11 princes, 4 ministers, and dozens of ex-ministers and businessmen have been arrested, some being held at Riyadh's luxurious Ritz-Carlton Hotel.
Well, among the detainees, one of the richest men in the world, billionaire Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, who is known for investing in American companies like Apple, Twitter, Citigroup, and News Corp. Prince Al-Walid recently did an interview with CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin, who said that the prince has been the singular face of business and finance and relations between Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world. Very well-known man.
Right. The arrest took place just a few hours after King Salman organized an anti-corruption committee, which is headed by his son, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Sorkin reports the stated goal is to root out corruption. Now, there are others, he says, however, who are whispering about whether this is really about a consolidation of power.
32-year-old Prince Mohammed, next in line to the throne, has been growing in power over the last few years through initiating economic and social reforms to help modernize the ancient kingdom. While the palace purge, as some are calling it, has investors in the oil market worrying, some foreign investors note the change positively.
Sam Zell, chairman of Equity Group Investments, a real estate firm he founded over 40 years ago, said that he's more likely to pour money into new projects there. He also said the arrests were long overdue for a country that has been resistant to modernization.
Now, one day after the arrest, a Saudi helicopter mysteriously crashed, killing 8 people, including one of the high-ranking Saudi princes and 4 other officials. Now, besides the internal affairs, the Saudi military has also intercepted a ballistic missile near its capital, which was reportedly launched from Yemen by Houthi fighters.
Well, Gerald Celente, founder of the Trends Research Institute, was interviewed by RT concerning what is taking place in Saudi Arabia and with its Middle East neighbors. Celente says, "You could see this coming for a long time," referring to the missile intercepted near Riyadh. He continued, "This is a buildup, as we see it, with a war with Iran."
Well, Mr. Celente said the terms prince and crown prince are merely labels to hide the fact that, as he said, quote, "this is a gang that's running the show." Now, he went on to explain that because of numerous reports of King Salman being very ill, his heir to the throne is just getting everything in order now, so as he takes over the kingdom, his power is basically solidified.
Interesting. Celente also points out Prince Mohammed is responsible for going to war with Yemen, the poorest Middle Eastern country. As a result, more than 10,000 people have lost their lives, infrastructure has been destroyed, and now a cholera epidemic has taken over. A true humanitarian crisis is in that tiny nation, but yet outside investors are willing to get involved with the Saudis regardless.
As to whether or not the Crown Prince is heading towards extreme modernization, Mr. Celente minimized this, saying Muslim women gaining the right to drive is not a great indicator of further movement towards modernization. Now, it would seem Prince Mohammed's moves are more about gaining power within his country and about the region.
Well, Celente believes we should learn what this future king is about from recent history, saying, let's look at what he said last May. The Crown Prince, he said, "We won't wait for the battle with Iran to be in Saudi Arabia. Instead, we're going to take the battle to Iran." And this is what he's talking about last May. And so Celente continued, what we're looking at is a buildup to war. So they're definitely looking at a buildup to war.
And it sounds like fighting words, we're not going to wait till it comes to us, we're going to bring it to them.
Kind of like that same mindset of the preemptive strike that U.S. President Trump is putting on the table that they would use against North Korea.
That's right. But Yemen and Iran are not the only countries the Saudis are turning on. It comes out of Saudi Arabia that Lebanon has been, quote, kidnapped by Hezbollah. Thus, the Saudis can justify use of force against the very tiny nation. Ali Al-Ahmed, director of the Institute of Gulf Affairs, appeared on RT recently saying he thinks the fact that Hezbollah is helping the Yemenis fight against the Saudis is not the reason why they are going after Lebanon. That has been a well-known fact for a while now, and the Yemenis have a right to seek outside help.
However, the Saudis and Israelis have been talking for some time, secretly but now openly holding meetings, and Ahmed said, referring to Lebanon, this could be a price that the Saudis are offering as a gift to the Israelis.
In light of Lebanon's Prime Minister Assad Hariri resigning while he was in Saudi Arabia, no less, Ahmed said, "It's very clear from all the information that has been gathered and coming out of Riyadh that Assad Hariri is not free. He's not doing this out of his free will. This was an imposed resignation by the Saudis, which is a very, very dangerous step, but they have been able to get away with it by basically kidnapping a sitting prime minister of another country and forcing him to resign."
Wow. He says this is the first move to control Lebanon, and what comes next is more war. Mr. Ahmed stated, "We're seeing and hearing about an Israeli, American, and Saudi plan to bomb parts of Lebanon, namely Hezbollah targets by Saudi jets, supported by the Americans and the Israelis."
Now, he continued, all the indications says that they will bomb Lebanon, flying over Jordan and parts of Syria to bomb parts of Lebanon. And we might see this happening over the next few days, in fact. When asked if he believed we were on the brink of war, Mr. Ahmed said yes. And Katan, that really seems to be the consensus with all the different analysts when they look at Saudi Arabia, Iran, Israel, Jordan, North Korea, and the different countries. Everybody has the same take that we are right on the brink to war.
That's right. But you know what's kind of sad is that it seems like we're almost in another generation that has kindly forgotten that report, that TAPS report, that was a collection of scientists from many different nations, which showed what would occur to the entire world, both North and Southern Hemisphere, if nuclear war was initiated. And of course, everything that's on the table right now is no longer conventional wars, but nuclear war. So we're definitely looking at nuclear war taking place very soon, and we're also looking at the evidence of that research coming to light, including the darkening of the sun.
Right. Absolutely. And that leads us to remind our viewers to contact the House of Yahweh today. Get your free information on the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter so you can avoid being caught up in those wars. Here's how you can contact the House of Yahweh.
Contact the House of Yahweh. You can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can also call them at 1-800-613-9494 or visit them on any of their websites by going to www.yahweh.com, www.yisraelhawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to www.ypnnews.com. And to email the House of Yahweh, you can write them at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget the Yisrael Says and Ask Yisrael program, which is available online for free to aid in your study of the Holy Scriptures, giving you a greater understanding about prophecy. You can find those programs by going to www.yisraelsays.com and www.askyisrael.com.
Well, once again, don't go anywhere. Up next is Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.